Hello and welcome to episode 135 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by Chitty's Cheesesteaks. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, joined by Matthias Altman Kirasaki, and reporting live from camp as we wrap up here, Brandyn Pokrass. Guys, thanks so much for coming on, Matthias. I know you were jet setting for a while, but you're back with us. I hope you had a good time. And Brandyn, I know you've been doing a bunch of things, covering the combine as well as all the spring training stuff running around. So appreciate you guys taking some time tonight. But listen, we made it through. Me and John Luke have been together the last couple episodes, just kind of been talking about it. Made it through the winter. Thursday's opening day. Obviously, the Mets have a tough task against Paul Skeens, but we made it through the winter. Got through spring, a World Baseball Classic, all this, and the road through 162 into a pennant starts on Thursday. Very, very excited. It's always a fun time of year when this starts up. Great time of year for sports and things like that. But just as we get going here, Brandyn, I'll start with you. Just kind of want to get your thoughts here as camp wraps up. Anything pressing, interesting that you've thought? Just you've been on the boots on the ground here, so just kind of want to get your final thoughts. As like I said, the Mets gear up for the regular season.
It might be a bit of a cop-out, but Carson Bench making the team is kind of the coolest kind of the coolest full story moment of the spring, because he comes in, it's cool when an organization's upfront about what a guy is going to be in terms of the spring, right? David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza came out and said, depending on what Bench does over the course of the spring, he has a real shot to be on the major league roster heading into the regular season, and he has a chance to be the starting right fielder. What did Carson Bench proceed to do? Proceed to have a fantastic spring. And, we could dive into the numbers of what Bench did in spring training. I think it's a bit, not the best to always do that, considering, sometimes you're facing guys that are going to be in the lower levels of the minors in back halves of games. But this is a guy that his at-bats got better every single game. And he was consistently learning from his mistakes, and he was consistently figuring out what to do and consistently learning, hey, if I don't do this correctly, now I'm going to do this better. I mean, some of the biggest strides I saw him take were when he was facing left-handed pitchers. Maybe he got out one at bat. The next at bat, he makes that adjustment. Now there's a double the other way, or it's a single the other way, or, he's taking those steps forward and really doing what he needs to do. And that doesn't include his base running, doesn't include his speed, doesn't include what he's shown in the field. And I think when you bring all that together, you really have a guy that is showing not only does he have the skill to play, but he has the mental makeup already to be a guy that, even if he's not scorching hot right off the bat, he's going to be able to make those adjustments and really be able to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I really wasn't sure what to expect from him in big league camp. But I mean, I'm thrilled for him, really. He was drafted less than 2 years ago, and now he'll be on the opening day roster. It's the first time the Mets have had a rookie debut on opening day for the team since Pete Alonso in 2019. And I mean, I think, obviously it's a tough break for Mike Tauchman getting injured. And really, I thought he was going to be on the roster either way, because he also had a solid spring. But like you were saying, I was really impressed with the way Benj progressed throughout camp. I remember he had a couple offers early, and people were wondering, is he going to be pressing? Is he going to, end up not making camp, or is he going to break camp but really struggle early on? And obviously, we still have to see what he does in regular season games. But I was really impressed with his approach. I think, he definitely got more comfortable. I started seeing more hard contact from him, which is good. Early on, he was getting those hits, but there were a lot of bleeders here and there. I like what he brings in the outfield. He has a great throwing arm. I mean, he was a two-way player at Oklahoma State, teammates with another two-way player, Nolan McLean. So that's also another cool little thing here, is that he's going to be on the big league roster with McLean. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in the majors. And I think he rightfully earned his spot.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, you have to say, just as far as, I think back to Pete Alonso's spring training, he was, similar to Bench, tore the cover off the ball, had a great spring. You like the approach, the at-bats, adjustments like you were talking about, Brandon. And this kid did everything possible to make the Mets, as hard as it was or hard as it could for the Mets to not keep him on the roster. So, props to them, props to him, obviously, like you're talking about. And listen, if he comes out of the gate and he struggles for the first couple weeks of the year, there's no reason why the Mets can't still send him down to AAA for a bit. You could bring up a guy like MJ Melendez. You also have Tyrone Taylor, to go back in as far as, if he does struggle. So I don't think the Mets are too worried, as far as that goes. And I don't think, nothing you're not worried about. It seems like the service time thing or whatever. Obviously, I think that still wouldn't matter because they sent him down after the first couple weeks of the year. That still would, the Super 2 thing would still be in effect. But excited to see him play. Excited to see him play right field. Excited to see how, guys like Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, Trevor Simeon, teach him and kind of how to go about to be a pro and handle New York. Obviously, Port St. Lucie is a lot different than Flushing, Queens and City Field. So we'll see how that goes. But, just a guy, like you said, less than 2 years, after being drafted, already debuting, on an opening day roster here, just shows how special of an athlete the guy is. So excited to see what he does. And hopefully he takes this and runs with it for the next 10 plus years, right? That's the hope. On the pitching side, excited to see about Freddie Peralta. I know he's obviously getting the nod with Skeens opening day. Strikeout pitcher, a guy who throws a lot of pitches, doesn't pitch too deep in the games, but talented guy. Seems to be saying all the right things so far as with the Mets and getting to know them seems to be going well. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts, Brandon. Like I said, as we're breaking here with that, as Peralta's getting the opening day nod here for the Mets.
Yeah, Peralta was another guy who I was interested to see how he, started to acclimate and how he really progressed over the course of the spring. And, it really felt like, outside of maybe a hiccup or two in an inning, it really felt like Peralta was, Freddie Peralta, right? The fastball was really good. The command was really good. I feel like the way he attacked hitters was really good. You want to see pitchers lay that foundation for themselves before they head into the regular season. Right, because so much of spring training is a buildup. So much of spring training is, figuring out what works and maybe working on a few different things. And I think Peralta did a really good job of that over the majority of his outings. And I think, heading into opening day, you're going to have a version of Freddie Peralta that's ready to roll, and a version of himself that, he's shown over the course of multiple years.
Yeah, I mean, I remember he had one like rocky-ish outing against the Yankees, but it was one of those where he gave a couple runs in the first.
One inning.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. He gave up a couple runs in the first, settled right down, looked like Freddie Peralta the rest of the outing. So I really liked what I saw from him in camp. I mean, he looks like himself. He looks comfortable with the team. He looks happy to be there. Obviously, we'll get to later in the year when we have to discuss, is he going to stay a Met beyond this season? But he looks really happy to be a Met. So, I think he's the right guy to match up with Skeens. Obviously, they want to, push McLean a little bit back. He'll be starting Game 3 of the season. I mean, he did pitch a couple times in the World Baseball Classic, including the championship game, which he was really impressive, I thought, throughout camp. So I think really as a whole, the pitching staff, I thought looked pretty solid. But I think Peralta's the right guy to open the season. I'm really excited to see him pitching in the blue and orange.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you talk about pitching. I mean, I got to ask about Kodai Senga too, right? Like we know what Peralta is. We think we know we're going to get there as far as, that frontline ace type guy, along with Nolan McLean, who you mentioned. But it seems like Senga's healthy in camp. I don't want to say it too loud and jinx anything, but it sounds like he's healthy. His fastball looks it. It's firm. It's, I know he's getting up into 99 at some points. What have you heard and seen? And, do you think the Mets can possibly get a bounce back year from a guy that, has ace potential, ace stuff?
And, it's interesting because like quotes and everything, it tells you a story, but doesn't obviously tell you like everything, right? Senga's saying he was more focused on his mechanics and really getting his mechanics down. Mendoza's mentioning how locked in Senga seems. And how he really seems like himself again, how he really seems healthy. And look, the results haven't been perfect, so to say, but that velocity is much better than where it was last year when he started to really tail off because of injury. The location of his pitches, much better as opposed to last year. The off-speed stuff looks really sharp. So you're having a Kodai Senga or a version of him that's hitting high velocities, that's touching 99, that is sitting 97, 98, and then he can work in those off speeds. It doesn't matter if he's your 3 or your 4. That's a huge asset for this Mets pitching staff, right? That's a huge asset for a team that struggled immensely with pitching depth. It's a huge asset if Sean Manaea isn't right. And, you might have to already test your depth heading into the year. So, I really don't care where the slot is necessarily for Senga. But if he's carrying that into the season and that velo is going to carry through and the location is going to carry through and the off speed in terms of the quality is going to carry through, that's only good news for the Mets.
Yeah, and I like how aggressive he's attacking this spring. He's not trying to hold back. He's showing his full arsenal and how good he can be. I think people almost are forgetting that I know that he's had injuries the last 2 years, and he really, really fell apart after that hamstring injury. But this is a guy who was an all-star and runner-up in Rookie of the Year voting in 2023. He struck out 200 batters as a rookie, and I know that he's 33 now, but there is somewhere in there's a frontline starter. I think people were ready to write him off after he got sent down to the minors last year, but I truly believe that he's still a very strong pitcher. And yeah, maybe he's not the number 1 or number 2, but I think that sort of speaks to the depth of this pitching staff. They were comfortable sending Jonah Tong down to the minors to begin the season. They were comfortable trading Brandon Sproat. So I think that Senga's in a good spot right now. I think it's reasonable to expect him to be in the rotation, at least to open the year. Sean Manaea, who knows what's going to happen there. I'm not even sure what exactly his role is. I know he's going to open the year in the bullpen. His velocity was down in the high 80s. But I think Senga seems like much more. It's weird to say. I feel more confident that he's going to be reliable for the rotation this year compared to Manaea.
Yeah. You kind of took the next thing out of my mouth there. I mean, if you have Senga is healthy and can do, what he's capable of, that we've seen the flashes of why, the Mets brought him over from Japan, it's a completely different rotation. It's like, lengthens it out completely. We haven't even mentioned guys like Clay Holmes and David Peterson on top of that too. So this quickly becomes, a guy like Senga, if he can, come back to form, there's no reason why this pitching staff, now something I've talked about is something I've worried about, becomes really a strength to this team. So, you hope he can continue to build on this from spring. And, you mentioned Sean Manaea. That was something I was going to bring up as well. I saw a thing that, now that he is in the bullpen, technically he would be the highest paid reliever in 2026 at $25 million this year. Wild to think just how quickly kind of the velocity fell off for him, like you mentioned, Matthias, pitching in the high 80s now. Obviously had the back thing last year, and we really didn't see him at all. When we did, he was a complete shell of himself from the 2024 pitcher that we saw. I guess I just want to get your thoughts here. I know Kimbrel didn't make the roster either, but I imagine someone like Manaea, like you said, Matthias, I don't know what his role is going to be. Maybe they piggyback him at some sort of 6th starter kind of bullpen day, but I'm curious what you're thinking or what you've heard, Brandon, because I imagine he won't have the longest leash possible.
It seems that, obviously it's so early in the season, right? Sean Manaea is going to be on the major league roster. Like Sean Manaea is going to be a part of that pitching staff. And he is going to be used as a guy to piggyback off someone to begin, as I think Mendoza said in one of his more recent pressers. I'm very interested to see if Manaea becomes one of the guys that is replaced by one of the rising arms, right? Is Manaea the guy that, a Jack Wenninger, when he's ready, replaces, right? Is there a lefty in the system that maybe jumps a level or two because they start or they have a really good beginning to their minor league season? The Mets are like, hey, we're going to give this kid a shot. right? I think he is the easiest pivot target because you either flip him to the bullpen or you kind of admit, hey, you kind of admit defeat on a player that you signed to a contract, it didn't work. This is why you have Steve Cohen, right? This is why you invest so much into the team. Where in past years, in previous ownership, this was an organization that, hey, you signed a guy to the contract. No matter if he's the worst player at his position in the league, you're keeping him. You're going to have to get through it. And whenever that contract's up, then you move on. Now it's like, hey, you have McClain, you have Peralta, you have Senga, you have Peterson, who looked really good in his last appearance against the Marlins, right? You have other guys on the rise. I really think you're now in a position when it comes to your pitching depth where if Sean Manaea isn't where you need him, you don't need to hamstring your roster by keeping him there. Now, I think the Mets, like I said, are going to give him every opportunity. But if it becomes a point where it's like instant runs, like last year when Manaea is entering the game and he just can't reclaim that form, I think they're going to make a move at some point. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, really, though, you look at his numbers last year, it's just bizarre. His strikeouts were way up.
Night and day. It was very weird.
Strikeouts way up, walks way down. For some reason, he was just getting shelled. It's just, I can't really explain what happened.
It was after, and this is why I think a bullpen role for him may be the best thing going forward. He was lights out early in games. When that first and second time occasionally through the order, or really the first time through the order, he was lights out. He got to that second time through, all of a sudden the location's going off a cliff, the velocity's decreasing, and he started to get shelled. Right? I think we might be approaching a point with Manaea where he can rev it up for, let's say, 30 to 40 pitches, maybe 50 on a good day. And when you start to get beyond that, he's overworked. There's nothing wrong in having a really good lefty long man out of the bullpen.
Yeah. And honestly, I'd be open to it. Or, maybe, and I don't think this is very likely because they have, AJ Minter and Brooks Raley, but maybe you make him a shorter reliever too. Like, or you could make him sort of a swingman type of an arm, sort of like what Josh Hader was earlier in his career. He was a multi-inning lefty. I'm not saying Sean Manaea is going to become Josh Hader all of a sudden, but, there's a chance that maybe his stuff does play up in shorter bursts. And I know he was pretty good as a reliever late in the year with the Giants in 2023. So he's pitched out of the bullpen before. And I thought he was pretty good as a piggyback guy late in the year. One of the few things that worked down the stretch for the Mets was Manaea coming out of games to relieve, coming out of the bullpen to relieve Clay Holmes. So I think we could see him very well piggybacking. I'll be at the game on Saturday, and supposedly the plan is for him to piggyback on David Peterson. So yeah, I think though it really does speak to the depth of the pitching throughout the Mets system. I mean, you talked about another guy about guys on the rise. I mean, they have a lefty, Jonathan Santucci, who's very much on the rise. He pitched very well in the spring breakout game. So Manaea's leash, I think maybe in the rotation might be kind of short, but I do expect him to be on the roster one way or the other.
And to add one more point to that, right? For that last bullpen spot, Mendoza said they're looking for a guy, and right now it's between Lovelady and Hudson. They're looking for a guy that can go multiple innings, and it looks like they're prioritizing a left-handed arm. There's no reason that if you get to a certain point in the season and Manaea is working better in short stints, and you're seeing that, there's no reason there's no reason to just keep him in the rotation, is what I'm trying to say. There's no reason you can't just be like, hey, your best stuff is coming when you're coming out of relief and in shorter stints. Let's try to get you more transition to this role. And who's to say by August, September, he's one of the best bullpen arms because he can truly cut it loose and doesn't have to worry about the stamina for multiple innings.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. The Mets are going to have to get creative, it seems, with him to get whatever they can out of him. Or, like you said, Brandon, they have that financial flexibility to eat a bad contract if they had to. So, we'll see what happens when the season starts here. But you hope all the best for a guy like Minaya. Being a left-handed pitcher, they can kind of figure something out to make him effective. That would be great. Last couple things, just as far as camp goes, just want to get your, what your thoughts are on Bo Bichette and Jorge Polanco. Obviously, new Mets playing new positions. Just kind of want to see what your feelings are with them breaking camp now with their first year with the club.
I'm going to be greedy and add a third player to those two you mentioned, named Brett Beatty.
Sure.
But to start off with Polanco, I think my favorite thing with Polanco is just his at-bats he takes. It feels like he's always taking professional at-bats. It always feels like he's doing the right things at the plate. And I think that's very cool. I think that's much needed for a team that, let's face it, over the past few years, their approach has kind of been very bad. And that's being kind at times, right? That's been something that fans all over the spectrum of Mets fandom have called out in terms of how they approach at-bats and situational hitting. And I think just having a guy like Polanco there is really going to help raise that floor. And in terms of first base, he looks much more comfortable than he did at the beginning of the season. I really think that ties into the next guy I'm going to talk about, Bo Bichette. Against Miami, the last game at Roger Dean Stadium the other day of the spring, he made a diving play and he made another play charging the ball where he got out at second. The diving play, runner was pretty fast. It was very deep in the hole, couldn't get the guy at first, but he already looks so much more comfortable playing that position than when he did at the start, right? It looks like he has some more range. It looks like he's understanding the time that he has. And I think that's a huge credit to Bichette and the work that he's truly put in. When David Wright made it over the Mets camp, Wright said in that press conference that Bichette reached out to him, that Bo Bichette personally reached out to him to work on different things at third base, and how Wright talked about how he was impressed by it and he was very touched by it. It's showing that dedication of a player that, let's face it, is top 5 at worst most important players for this Mets season on offense. You could make an argument that he's no lower than 3. The fact that he's putting in that work on the defensive side, where if he sticks at third base and you don't have to worry about, tossing guys all over the field to cover up a bad defensive hole, that makes things a lot easier. That makes things very easy for the 2026 season. And at the plate, Bo Bichette, that's really all I have to say. He's a hitter. He's fantastic in his approach. He hits for power, hits for average. Like he's done it all this spring, and he's really put it on display. I want to mention Brett Beatty too, because if I were to go out on a limb and say this, he's probably the guy I've been most impressed by on the entire roster this spring, because he's played multiple spots and performed well at them. He was making scoops at first base, a position that he had never played until this year, right? And you look at his hitting, whether it's against lefties, whether against righties, whether it's against velo, off speed, he's hitting everything. And yes, we've seen a little bit of this before, but his approach and how he's hitting the baseball is much more impressive to me, because it's not just the single up the middle, the single to the left side. No, he's driving the ball too, and he's hitting the ball deep to all fields. And he's just, it truly looks like Beatty is comfortable. It really looks like this is a guy that is comfortable within himself, is not worrying and looking over his shoulder, which if you've played baseball or you played sports, you know how big that is. The fact that you can be comfortable and allow yourself to grow without worrying that one false step can truly send you back to a different level or send you backwards, right? So I think all that is combining for Beatty, and he's having one of the best, if not the best spring of any Mets position player. And if he clicks on that level for this team this year, he could be one of the most important players, because what does a high quality Brett Beatty do to that lineup? It elevates it pretty damn high.
Yeah, and I expect Beatty to get, honestly, I think they said this number after the Mets signed Bichette, but I'm expecting Beatty to get around 500 plate appearances this year. And I think going into opening day, I'm expecting either him to DH or him to play first base, and Polanco will do the other thing. Like you were saying about Polanco, I thought he looked pretty good at the plate. I know it was a limited sample, but I don't doubt his hitting ability. I think first base, honestly, I know everyone's posting the clip of the one bad throw he made, but really, I thought he looked all right at first base. And to your point, I think Beatty playing first base and right field both for the first time, I thought he looked kind of comfortable out there. And slowly, more and more, I saw more of what I like to see from Bo Bichette at third base. Unfortunately, this leaves one guy out of the rotation here, Mark Vientos.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has the short end of the stick here. Dreadful spring. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He did not have a great spring. He did not have a great World Baseball Classic. He's coming off a down year. He doesn't really have a position. And I would say it would be best for him and for the team to find a trade partner for him. I think there is a good hitter in there somewhere. I just don't know if we can see that with the Mets. I don't know if the Mets can wait around for him here.
And to add another factor to that, they have Jacob Reimer knocking on the door in a few years.
Exactly.
Who's probably a better version of Vientos. So, or can be a better version of Vientos, because you never know how prospects pan out. But I don't know. Like that's the biggest. If it's not the biggest question, it's definitely like top 2 or top 3. Like I don't know what you do with him, because, and it's not just because of the spring. I just don't know if I'm playing him over a Polanco. I'm not playing him over a Beatty. You're not playing him over Bo Bichette, right? So if he's not DHing, he's not playing first base, and he's not playing third base, you're just carrying Mark Vientos as your right-handed pinch hitter?
And he's out of options, so you can't send him to the minors anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some team can unlock him. Like, we saw how great he could be in 2024. I think his time, unfortunately, has run out here. I really, he's had great moments. Even last year, he had some great moments. Just right now, it's hard to find a spot for him. And we didn't even mention Ryan Clifford, who's also a corner infielder, obviously more so at first base. But, it's just there's so many guys right now. It's a good problem to have. Unfortunately, he right now is on the losing end of it.
And the biggest thing, and I know this will probably come up when it comes to Mark Vientos. People are going to be like, why can't you just cut him and get rid of him? The Mets are not going to do that, because the minute
it would be the wrong thing.
The minute you put Vientos on the waiver wire, there's going to be 7 teams that claim him. Because, okay, let's throw out an example here. Why would the Colorado Rockies not put a claim in for Vientos and be like, hey, just take 500 at-bats this year and just see what happens at Coors, right? You could... The Rays, the Athletics, like there's a bunch of teams in this like range that it's not necessarily even like the bad teams, but the teams that are always looking for value in guys that, are cast off from one team, but still have, let's say in Vientos' case, the power. So I don't think he's getting moved unless the Mets truly find something they deem worthy, or maybe 50 cents on the dollar worthy.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Bringing up Vientos is kind of that odd man out. From all the guys you mentioned now, he just feels like he's a man without a position, man without a team, country, that sort of thing. Out on an island by himself. So if they can find a trade partner, I do agree that that's probably the best thing that can happen. It'll really be annoying, if he figures it out somewhere else again, because like you said, we saw what he could do in 2024, hitting grand slams in the LCS against the Dodgers, things like that. But it's one of those things where it just seems like a change of scenery is probably necessary for both sides. But last couple, we'll wrap it up here. I want to just talk about Lindor. How's he looking in camp? Obviously, he's back playing in games. He had the surgery on the hamate bone in his hand, so I just kind of want to talk about him a little bit. Your thoughts there, how he's looking, and if you expect him to, as a player who starts off particularly slow every year, if you think that this will hamper that, even kind of more.
I don't know if it's going to hamper it even more, but I think, it is a hand injury. And the best thing for Lindor is getting reps. And I think as many reps as he gets at the plate, in the field, is going to be great for him. Like he was making sliding plays and plays in the hole against the Marlins, right? The fielding, I don't think is ever going to go away. That's just, he's so good at that. His hands, his range, just truly phenomenal. I really think that hitting is starting to come along. Like he smoked a 97 mile an hour single that deflected off the first baseman for Miami. It was I think it was his sole hit of the game. You know, the fact that that's coming through, the fact that he is starting to rev up that velocity again, I think is really good. I think the biggest question with Lindor is going to be the power, right? I think he's going to be able to make contact. I think he's going to be able to have great at-bats. I think he's going to be able to do great things at the plate. But is that power not going to come until, let's say, May? Let's say early June, when he truly feels like, okay, my hand is fully back to where I have all the range of motion and that mental block is fully gone, right? And you see that a lot with the hamate bone injury. You see that a lot with guys that have gone through it. I mean, look at Francisco Alvarez. It took him a little bit to truly find that power stroke again. The hitting was there. He was still getting hits, but that true power, that true explosive extra base hit ability didn't come until a little bit later. So I think that's the main thing to watch with that. But otherwise, Francisco Lindor looks like Francisco Lindor. And I think that's always going to be the case.
Yeah, honestly, the biggest thing I wanted to see from him coming into opening day was just, can he get anything going in game action? And it's not like, you know, it's good that he's not entering opening day having not seen any live action this spring. He was able to play minor league games and then eventually in big league camp games. So, I agree. I'm not sure if we're going to see a guy who's, you know, putting up 1,000 OPS right away in April, but I think he can still be effective. You know, definitely in the field. So, you know, I think we might have to temper expectations to start the year. You know, maybe not everyone will freak out if he, you know, has a slow first couple of weeks, as usual. But I think it'll be good for the team though, like especially for like the morale and everything, to have him ready to go in the lineup on opening day.
I don't know, man. The early season Lindor freak out from the Mets fan base is kind of
it's gonna go crazy again.
It's kind of like an annual tradition at this point. And you know, the minute he doesn't get a hit for like 3 games, it's gonna be like, oh no, Lindor is starting to fall off. What are we gonna do? It's clockwork. It's truly clockwork.
Yeah. Listen, it's good to have him in the lineup every day. He's pretty much the unofficial captain of this team. So it's good for them, like you said, morale, and just for the clubhouse to have him in there. And, you know, like I said, he's not a guy who starts particularly hot to begin with. So, you know, hopefully it doesn't hamper him too much. But the fact that he'll be in there ready to go for opening day is a big thing. So it'll be good to see him there. And, you know, if he starts off slow, there's a guy named Juan Soto who could probably help pick up the slack. I don't really have much to say about him other than he's Juan Soto. He's on the Mets. And we get to watch him. He's really good. I don't have comments. That's it. He's just really, really good at baseball. So we get to watch him play. That's it.
MVP season, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it. Yeah.
If Ohtani's arm gets cut off, yes. Unfortunately for Soto's not 2 players in 1. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's going to be fighting for that, and we'll see how he does for an encore for an almost 40-40 season, right? Pretty wild. After talk about, you know, freakouts, he obviously had pretty much a slow first 2 months of the year to start, and you know, look what happened at the end of the year. I think everyone forgot there was much bigger problems that Mets fans, you know, had worried about than Juan Soto's numbers at the end of the year. But go ahead.
No, I was saying, yep. Hopefully 2026 does not bear those out once again.
Yeah, absolutely. But listen, guys, thanks a lot for coming on. We'll wrap things up here. Catch us before the opening day. We'll have Mike on, Mike Mayer, previewing the season ahead. But this was great, wrapping up, you know, spring training editions of MMO Weekly. Like I said, folks, we're here. Season's around the corner. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And as always, let's go Mets.